All right, so yes, this is the most important lesson of the year, and here's why. This is one of the few topics in 8th grade that is brand new. Okay? Y'all have not learned this before. All right, and because of that, it's going to be on the STAR test quite a bit. Last year there were 60 questions on the STAR test. I believe 6 of them were Pythagorean Theorem, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Okay? That's 10% of your test. It's a big percentage. Okay? So, it's very important that we understand this. The good news is, once you figure out what it is we're talking about, it's super easy. It's very, very easy. Okay? But we got to make sure that we're all paying attention. That's why we're making this video here, so that if you're not paying attention, you can go back and repay attention. All right. So, the lesson itself is over the Pythagorean Theorem. All right, now 8th graders love to mispronounce this. They think it's really funny. So I'm going to give you guys 10 seconds to mispronounce it and get all the laughs and giggles out. So, go. There we go. We got it. All right. Well, y'all laughed really hard, so we're going to count that as 10 seconds. All right. 8th graders love to say the Korean theorem or the Pythagorean theorem. I got you. It's a weird word. It's funny. You need to be able to say it so that when we can talk about problems. So, here's how you pronounce it. Pith. Ag. Orion like Korean. Pythagorean theorem. All right, good. Pythagorean theorem. The Pythagorean theorem deals exclusively with right triangles. That means it only works with right triangles. Okay, what's a right triangle?
It's got a right angle in it.
Good. It's a triangle that has a 90-degree angle in it. Okay. If we're dealing with a triangle that has a 90-degree angle in it, this will work. If it doesn't have a 90-degree angle in it, it will not work. Okay? So we've got to keep that in mind. Now, before we can actually talk about the theorem itself, we need to know certain things about a right triangle. All right? The first being these two sides here. Here and here. These are the sides that make the right angle, right? Okay? The two sides that make the right angle are known as your legs. They are the legs of that triangle. Okay? The legs of your triangle. You need to be able to identify that those are your legs, no matter how the triangle looks. The two sides that make the right angle are the legs. We will label them. Anytime we use Pythagorean theorem, we will label the legs A and B. It does not matter which one is A, which one is B. All right, so you could do one of them is A, the other is B, or you could flip it. It does not matter, okay? As long as A and B are referring to your legs, you're going to be fine. Then we have the one that does matter. If you get this one twisted, it's going to be a problem. Okay, so make sure that we understand. This line over here. Why is it doing that? I don't understand what's happening. You see this?
Yeah.
What is going on? We'll do like that. All right. This side is always opposite of the right angle. Okay. It's always the longest side of the triangle. Those are the two things that you need to recognize. It's opposite of the right angle, and it's the longest side of the triangle. That side is known as a hypotenuse.
Hypotenuse means like a theory that your person is right.
The hypotenuse is the longest side of a right triangle opposite of the right angle. Okay? We have to be able to recognize which side of the triangle is the hypotenuse, because in order for the Pythagorean theorem to work, we have to label that as C. If we're not able to recognize it and put the C there, we're not going to ever get any of these problems correct. It's always the longest side. It's always opposite of the right angle. Okay? If it's not a leg, it's a hypotenuse. It's pretty simple. Okay? So, the actual Pythagorean theorem, this is the rule that we will use over and over and over until you graduate. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. That is the actual theorem. Okay? You will actually be given this formula on your formula chart, all right? But I promise you'll have it memorized before then, because it's ABC. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So, what that actually means, okay, is if we have a right triangle, okay, and we take the side length of A. Let's say A is this one right here. And I need to change. That's a bad color for this background. Let's see that one. All right, this is A. If I were to square that, that means take it and multiply it by itself. That would give me the area of this square right here.
Wait, how did you get that square?
I took the side times itself. Now, if I took this side times itself, it would give me another square.
Okay.
Or you need a triangle.
Something like that. Okay? Because if this is A, and it's a square, then A and A would make A squared, right? Length times width.
Oh, I get it, yeah.
And if this is B, B times B would be B squared. Finally, we have our hypotenuse. It would also make a square. Notice it's the biggest square. Okay. This would be C, so C times C is C squared. Now, what the Pythagorean theorem tells us is that if I take the area of this square and this square, it will equal this square right here.
Is it true?
It's always true, yes.
Okay.
Okay? So, let me actually show you some examples. Okay? We will use this anytime we need to find a missing side of a triangle. Okay? Of a right triangle. It won't work on every triangle, but it will work on any right triangle. So, let's say you have this triangle here. Alright, and let's say this is 24 and this is 7. Okay? What side is it that we don't know?
The hypotenuse.
The hypotenuse. And what letter is that?
C.
C. We don't know C. Okay? So, the first two examples I'm going to give you is a missing hypotenuse. Golly. Missing hypotenuse. The missing C. Okay? When we're missing a leg, it's a little bit different. But if we're missing the hypotenuse, this is actually very easy. We have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. What's my A?
7.
Good. 7 squared plus B would be
24.
24 squared. And that'll equal C squared. Now, in your calculator, do 7 squared plus 24 squared.
Can you give me my calculator? 625.
Oh,
All right, we get 625 is equal to C squared. Now, we don't actually want C squared, right? We want to know what C is. So,
Divided by 625.
a lot of 8th graders want to divide it by 2. You can't. There you go. Ryan's got it. This is one of the main concepts of Pythagorean theorem. If we want to go from C squared to just C, you have to square root it. All right? The square root of C squared is C. It gets rid of that squared symbol. The square root of 625, you can find on your calculator. It's 25.
so you just put square on there?
You would square root it.
Okay.
Second, and then the little x with the little 2.
Oh, I see.
That gives you the square root. Okay. So, let's try a different one. Let's say we have
Oh, I get
All right, and this is going to be another one with a missing hypotenuse. We'll say 3 and 4.
3 is A and 4 is
Good. So that would be 3 squared plus
4 squared.
4 squared.
4 squared is going to equal c squared. All right, so that's 9 and 16. That's going to give us 25 is equal to c squared. So our last step is to square root both sides, and you get that c is equal to 5.
Coach, how did you get the 9 and 16?
3 squared is 9, and 4 squared is 16.
Oh, okay.
Hold on, don't erase that yet.
No.
Okay, so that's if we're missing the hypotenuse. Let's look at if we're missing a leg. Okay, it's just a little bit different. Okay, we have our right triangle. Let's say it's 12 and 15. So what are we missing?
A.
You could say A, you could say B, it doesn't really matter, but we're missing one of the legs. Okay, so A squared plus B squared equals C squared. We're still plugging things in here. Alright, we still don't know A.
B equals 144.
B would be 12 squared. And C is 15, so 15 squared. Alright, we'd need to do those squares out. So 12 squared is 144. Please don't do 12 times 2. It's 12 times 12. 15 squared is what, 225, I think? Pretty sure. Alright, so we get to this point. Any questions on how I've gotten to this point? Now, we want to solve for a squared. In order to do that, we have to get a squared alone. So what's over there with the a squared that we want to get rid of?
Square. 144.
The 144. Now, how do we get rid of 144?
Subtract by 144.
Good. Subtract 144
On each side.
from each side. Okay. That would cancel this out. So you're left with a squared equals 81. So our last step is to square root. So a is equal to 9. Okay. All right, now I'm going to try a different one. We'll say this is 10.
You could have just subtracted 225 from 144, and then it would have been 81, and then square root of 81 is 9.
That's what we did.
Well, like, you didn't have to go through all that, subtract on each side, so.
That's exactly what you just said to do. All right, let's say this is 10, and this is 6. Okay, so we don't know a squared. We know that b is 6, so that'd be 6 squared equals 10 squared. So that's a squared plus 36 equals 100. Subtract 36 from both sides, you get that a squared is equal to 64. Square root both sides, you get that a is equal to 8. All right, now, that's an example of finding the missing leg. So what I want you to do is in your book on page 223, I want you to do numbers 4 and 5, and let's see how well you can do it. Okay, so number 4, what was missing?
C.
C, the hypotenuse was missing, so that was 30, 40, and we're solving for C. So, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. 30 squared plus 40 squared would have been 2,500. Square root both sides, and you would get that c is equal to 50.
Are we allowed to use our notes for the test or no?
In your head.
Alright.
Coach, I got that one right. Aren't you proud?
Nope. No one's crying.
Alright, then we have 41 and 40. We're solving for the missing leg this time. So, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That gives us a squared plus 1600 equals 1681.
How did you get 1600?
40 times 40 is 1600.
Oh, yeah.
Then we subtract 1600 from both sides,
81.
and you get a squared is equal to 81.
Oh, so that's what I did wrong.
Square root both sides, and a would be equal to 9.
Yeah.
Here, Coach, let me write that down real fast.
Coach, I got it right.
I need to use this.
Alright, you can finish writing that down if you need to. Alright, that is our lesson on Pythagorean Theorem. Now we're going to get into other types of questions, word problems, and other ways they can present it to you. But this is the basics on Pythagorean Theorem.